Hello everybody and welcome back to another Kings of War Battle Report. I'm Visibly Riley, and this week we have Empire of Dust versus the Northern Alliance. This battle was fought at 2300 points and the scenario was Dominate. So first up we have my opponent's Northern Alliance army, which opens with a regiment and 2 troops of pack hunters now that the regiment unlocks. Then we have 2 regiments of snow foxes, a horde of ice elementals, a troop of tundra wolves, a horde of snow trolls with the Chalice of Wrath, a horde of Frostfang Cav, a Cavern Dweller, a Thane with the Inspiring Talisman and Talinar's standard upgrades, then a Lord on Frostfang, an Ice Queen with Heal 5 and replacing her Icy Breath 10 with Surge 8, and finally a Lord on Chimera. Next up we have my Empire of Dust army. It's the same one I played in the last report, but let's run through it real quick anyway. It opens with a horde of skeleton warriors, followed by 2 regiments of skeleton spearmen, then a regiment of mummies with the Healing Brew, 2 troops of skeleton Deadeye crossbows, a horde of enslaved guardians with the Potion of the Caterpillar, a horde of enslaved guardian archers with the Blessing of the Gods, 2 bone giants, a monolith, 2 balefire catapults, one of whom has scarab jars for shattering, then a soul snare, an undead ASB with a Tome of Darkness, and finally Sebek Ray the Accursed. So with that, let's move into the scenario, which is Dominate. Dominate's pretty simple. You have a 12-inch radius from the center of the table that creates your circle. So the majority, you put units into it with the majority of their footprint within that. You count up their unit strength at the end of the game. That's your total victory points. The person with the highest points wins. So it looks a bit like this on the table to visualize it. This isn't exactly right because I didn't measure out the dimensions, or this is obviously digital, so I didn't get it exactly right. But this is pretty close. A lot of people get confused in Dominate, which is an interesting one because it's a 12-inch radius, right? So that is the 12 inches. It is not a 12-inch diameter, right? It's not directly through the whole center. So it's much larger than a lot of people think. This is actually a 24-inch thing, so it's about, the center of the field. So anyway, let's talk about the terrain real quick. We have 2 height 9 forests, followed by 2 height 1 pieces of difficult. Then we have 2 height 3 hills, we have got 4 height 2 barriers, and finally 2 height 9 impassables. So I actually built this table. It's my opponent's terrain. My terrain was being used on a table next to us, which was nice. It's always nice to see people getting their games in, and especially because I spent some time on that terrain. I like seeing it being used, right? Even if I'm not going to use it. This table is a little tighter on the terrain. I don't like that it's in kind of bands like this, but again, our terrain is a little large, I think. I would like to create some smaller pieces so I can stop putting things in bands. But the key to this table was to build some firing lanes, because I actually, that was a bad one. But I like having some firing lanes firing through the table here, just because it makes it a little bit more interesting, just showing that you don't need a ton of terrain, you just need to be using the terrain that you have effectively, right? You need to be blocking, so there's a shot from here over into my opponent's deployment zone, or over onto this deployment zone, but it's blocked by this wall and this piece of impassable. So, and the same thing over here, but there's one clean shot from here to here, and then there's another clean shot from here to here, and a clean shot here to here. But those are it, right? The other way doesn't work so much, right? All the terrain's running into each other, and that's on purpose to make things a bit more congested, just showing off that you don't need a ton of terrain to do that. And it's one of the things in Kings of War I wish the rulebook went into a bit more detail onto how to set up a proper table. I'm not saying that this is a proper table. In fact, I would like it if the rules designers would show us the kind of tables that they are playing on to explain kind of the rules that we're seeing, right? Like, why was shooting nerfed so much? Well, maybe they're playing on super open tables, right? Or, why is Pathfinder, this really expensive rule? Well, maybe they're playing on super congested tables. So I would actually like to see more examples like that and just see a stronger line in the sand, because when you're building competitive games, you can always say stuff like that. You can push a lot harder into this more niche, 1% style of play, and at the same time release books like the excellent Halpi's Rift to show off sort of that narrative play, right? And in fact, I would like to see more rules added to the game where they are just suggestions that you can do for your tournament, right? So like have some suffixes essentially, where you go like, this is the tournament, but we're also going to have blank, right? We're also going to have Halpi's Rift dimension rules. or we're also going to have whatever you want, right? And I think allies should honestly be one of those. I'm not a big fan of allies. I don't think that they add anything to the balance of the game, especially because, as was pointed out in an Unplugged radio episode, that they are just sort of determined by alignment. And alignment is not something that's mechanical. Alignment is something that's honestly a bit of a misguided attempt to go to this Gygaxian style of racial morality, which is, just as bad as it sounds, in my opinion. But so anyway, I would like to see a lot of those things move to the idea of an artifice, right? You would add them to your event rather than have them be baseline. And I think it would open up a lot of space for a little bit less competitive play, or a bit more narrative play that people call it, where you just have some weirder rules that aren't meant to be completely balanced. Like, again, allies. Anyway, let's move on to the deployment. So first up, in the front here, we have the 2 troops of pack hunters. Behind them is the Thunderwolf troop. Then we have the Lord on Chimera right here. We have a Snowfox regiment. In front of it is a Frostbane Cav horde. Then off to the right of that, we have the Ice Elemental Horde with the Ice Queen with Surge 8 and Heal 5. I actually missed this when I was labeling the pictures, but there's the 2nd Regiment of Snowfoxes right there. Then we have the Cavern Dweller. Behind it is the Thane with Talinar Standard, Inspiring Talisman. Then off to the right of that, we have a Snow Troll Horde with a Chalice of Wrath, a Lord on Frostfang, and a Pack Hunter Regiment. I did note that while my opponent was deploying this army, I wasn't like counting it out. I don't know what they're going to play before they show up, but I played against this opponent's Northern Alliance quite a bit, and I was like, this seems like they're dropping a lot more units, or maybe my army is just more elite than I remember it, and I just didn't notice that they had 14 drops, which is 2 more than they generally run. So interesting bit on, like, that muscle memory of going like, I think I should be dropping alone by this point, and I wasn't. So anyway, I wasn't paying attention to the number, I just had that muscle memory built in. So anyway, facing off against that right side with the trolls, we have the Deadeye Crossbow Troop with the first one, followed by the Undead ASB with the Tome of Darkness, and an unmarked horde of Skeleton Warriors. To the right of that, we have the Enslaved Guardian Horde with the Caterpillar Potion. To the right of that, the Soul Snare. And off to the right of that, it gets a bit more congested. We have the Skeleton Spearman Regiment, or the first of it. We have Sebek Ray just poking out. You can see him right back there, hiding behind this pile. To the right of Sebek is the first Balefire Catapult with no upgrade. Then we have the Bone Giant in front of that. To the right of that, we have the Mummy Regiment with Healing Brew. And behind it, we have the Monolith. And finally, off to the right of that, we have the 2nd Bone Giant, the 2nd Regiment of Skeleton Spearmen, the Enslaved Guardian Archer Horde, and off on their lonesome, the Deadeye Crossbow Troop. So that's going to be it for deployment. Let's get into turn 1. So turn 1 ends up going to the Empire of Dust. We advance as you might expect. We just sort of push forward. It's the undead special, right? Like, you maintain your line, you push forward, and that's about it for your turn 1. So anyway, we push for that. I do like this deployment. I've mentioned it in previous battle reports, but I'll mention it real quick here, which is I like having the 2 regiments of Skeleton Spearmen because they're tougher than a lot of people might think. Phalanx, I think, is a really hit of a rule. I think it really works, because a lot of very powerful, hard-hitting Alpha Strike units, or units that are, going to outrange you, are stuff like this Cav or this Dragon, right? So they're either Cav, they're Dragon, or they have some semblance of Thunderous Charge. And this unit making you -1 to hit and no Thunderous is really good at surviving more than the 1 turn you might think a regiment would survive. I was listening to a recent episode of Countercharge, where I know Mike Rossi asked the question of, are infantry regiments good in a world of cav and large infantry and monsters and all that? And I think, yes, they are quite good. It just kind of depends, and it depends on how you use it. Obviously, it depends on how you use it, but you have to adjust your thinking to going, this is going to survive and do real damage, to instead going, well, can it survive another turn? Can it throw dogs? Can it capture area? Unit strength 3 is really efficient, right? If you're you're running multiple regiments instead of a horde, you can't just send, multiple units into my horde and kill it off like my skeleton warriors. Each of these have to be killed individually. So it just depends. It's not depending on how you use it. It's depending on how you perceive it, how you're thinking about these regiments. What are they supposed to be doing, right? What is being effective on the table mean, right? And in my opinion, for at least skeleton spearmen, it means surviving for 2 rounds of combat. That's what I'm looking for. Everything else is gravy. So anyway, that's the idea. And speaking of that, I have the mummy regiment in the middle. It does okay damage. It is very hard to kill off because they're dash 18, they're def 5, they have regen 5+. Excellent unit. But they don't really do enough to kill any of these units besides the maybe these troops. So instead I have the double giants here, which can deal some serious damage along with them. All 3 of these units are kind of medium damage units, but combined they deal some serious threat, and they can actually heal quite a bit and get around for some weird charges, because I set my giants slightly back to make sure that they don't get charged and block up 3 units, right? So I push them back a little bit, and because they have this perfect square, they can get some really interesting corkscrew charges naturally, and then they can also get them through surge. So that's the plan. You could set them back an exact inch backwards, right? And then set up some really interesting charges, but I don't think it's necessary most of the time. Anyway, that's enough of that. Let's talk about the rest of the movement, which is essentially nothing, because this is the shooting side. I do move forward with the crossbows, because the crossbows are only 24-inch range, which means they're out of range turn 1. A lot of people miss this coming in from other systems. Kings of War says you set up slightly under 12 inches for your deployment zone. So it's slightly more than 24 between you and your opponent if you set up exactly on the line. So you can't shoot turn 1 if you go first unless you move. So I move these guys forward. They've got snapshot. I'm not too worried about it because I'm going to be firing into either units in cover or units that have stealthy. And I already hit on a 5+, so who cares? Snapshot, half the shots, it'll be fine. These guys are set up to fire off. Oh, I do move these guys forward to be exactly out of 23 of these, because the pack hunters are speed 5 and 18-inch short bows, so I'm slightly out of their range and slightly within my own of 24. And then I'm gonna set them up to combine fire with my enslaved guardian archers here. Really good unit, even when it rolls poorly. Then I have the 2 catapults here. I generally deploy my catapults. I like to have clear lines of fire, but I was noticing while my opponent was putting down the army, and again, I played against it quite a few times, that they don't have a lot of units that are infantry, right? So they have, or infantry size. So we have the Thunderwolves, we have the little pack hunters, right? But mostly we have stuff like the Dragon and the Frostfang Cav and the Ice Elementals and the Cavern Dweller and the Trolls, right? These are the units I really want to be targeting with catapults. And they're all taller than me, so I just go, well, screw it. I can just set up with this classic behind my own lines setup, because I'll just fire over my own stuff. And while you don't ignore, under the new Clash of Kings 20 set, I don't ignore cover that you are 50% within, right? So you get cover in 2 ways in Kings of War. One is intervening terrain or models, and the other is being within terrain, right? So these catapults no longer ignore this style of cover, being in stuff, but they still ignore the cover firing over my own units, so, might as well use it. And off here on the right, not a whole lot happening. I do move forward with the crossbows. Same thing, I'm out of 23 of this regiment, but I can fire off some snapshots. And then I move forward with these warriors to be in cover. If these guys move forward, there's no way that they can dodge cover from this obstacle and the hill. So just to limit their ability to deal damage. And then I walk the enslaved guardians just far enough that they're behind this hill. And my idea here is that, yes, the Cavern Dweller is tall enough to see, and the Lord on Frostfang is tall enough to see over this hill and charge me, but this is only a 12-inch charge, this is a 14-inch charge. I don't think this Cavern Dweller is really going to be wanting to go this way with what's going on my left side. I think this is a swing unit that's probably going to swing to my left. And on the right, these trolls are the really dangerous unit, obviously in conjunction, right? But they cannot see me if I do not go onto this hill. So I want my opponent to have to walk onto the hill. And if they want to play the little game of, sitting and hiding as well behind it with the trolls, well, I'll just walk onto the hill and go for a 1-inch surge. So yeah, it's just surge things. It's what you get. It's a nice benefit. Again, shambling is not a good rule, shambling is not a positive rule at all in any way, shape, or form. but Surge is an amazing rule, and it's so good that it might be a bit much, along with the other advantages that you gain from the... Anyway, so Surge is great, Shambling is bad. But moving forward, we've got my shooting. All of this fires into some pack hunters. We do 4 damage to them. They're a 9/11, so I'm not expecting to kill them, but you know, a waiver would be nice, which is a 5. So this is perfect damage, I think, or right around the mean, and then a 5 is a good roll. And then over here, we fire about the catapults, and we don't hit the cabin dwellers. So unfortunate. It always sucks when your catapults miss turn 1. But we do fire with this little bit of crossbows, and we do 1 point of damage to these pack hunters. They are stealthy, they're in cover, but I don't care because I'm snapshotting anyway. So eat 1 damage. Pew pew! And here's the end of the turn. You can see here, this does not cause a panic or anything. But over here, I do hit that 7. I think I had to hit it twice, so that's around a 25% chance of success, and I get it. So, yeah, off to a good start here. Deleting one of my opponent's 14 units at the beginning of the game. Always solid when you have this medium ranged style of list. Like, I have some serious range threat in this, but I'm not like a full ranged army. I'm a mixed threat army. So anyway, let's move into Northern Alliance, turn 1. And yeah, they basically just move forward a fair bit. They are pretty fast. I will say I expected this dragon to walk into the woods here, because the Frostbane Cav were using it as cover against my artillery in the previous turn, but I thought that they would move forward and then the dragon would take that vacated area, so that the dragon would still be projecting threat, but still have cover against these catapults. But instead, my opponent goes with the tried and true, just fly around and go for, you know, sitting on the flank here. It's not... I don't think this kind of maneuver is as powerful against undead armies or elemental armies or shambling armies, just because if you get out of their line of sight, they'll just turn around and surge into you. So it's not quite as good, but this is a good example of how a dragon is well used, because this is projecting a lot of threat, and even though it's super expensive, it doesn't need to get in combat just yet. It doesn't even need to get in combat next turn. It just needs me to worry about it getting into combat next turn. So solid use there. As you can see, everything else just moves forward. This cabin dweller is just protecting Talinar Standard, and we've got the trolls not deciding that running directly forward towards a hill in my shambling enslaved guardians is not the best move. But up here on the right, you can see these guys just form a little mini battle line. We've got the little pack hunters are going to fire into me, and then this guy just getting ready. It is very inspiring, so it's pretty nice for these units over here. So we go into my opponent's shooting. First off, these pack hunters, they fire into my skeleton spearmen, do 3 damage, which is pretty good. Although I think they have 10 shots and 10 attacks, period. So 10 shots on 5s due to moving, and then 4 is to wound. 3 is solid. And then over here with these pack hunters, they have 12 shots, I believe, and fire into my horde of warriors and do nothing. So, you know, womp womp. And here we go with the end of turn shot. No units are dead. I've suffered 3 damage. Feeling good. So let's move into turn 2. So turn 2 for the Empire of Dust. You can see I don't move any of this stuff in the backfield. I could have moved with the crossbows. I just don't see the point. I'd rather just get this 1 turn of hitting on 5s and then dying. Who cares? They are 90 points, I think. And then I do move the this little formation forward. I had to break it a little bit, and I'm not exactly sure how to do that effectively or perfectly in the future with this giant, because I needed to leave this 1 gap so I could turn this unit and see over here. But I'm still okay with it because this unit can shift to the right 2 inches, which it doesn't look like it right now, but I do readjust this after the picture's taken. So they could shift over here, and then that'll allow the giant to go directly forward. So that's the plan. And then I position this little area to protect all of our flanks. So the skeleton spearmen and the mummies are close enough together that the dragon and these tundra wolves are in the flank of the mummies but cannot land due to the skeleton spearmen. And then these units are in the front. The units that are in the flank of the skeleton spearmen cannot charge because of the same thing, right? They don't fit. And then over here, I do have to make a bit... I adjust this a little bit, but I honestly should have just pulled the whole formation backwards. I just didn't want to because I had already moved all this stuff and I wasn't exactly sure how that was going to work out, because with the 1 pivot, right, like it's not going to be this, but back here, right? It doesn't work exactly like that. So Anyway, I still should have probably pulled it back and just tested it that way, because this cavern dweller is in the flank of these mummies, and I need to have that not happen. I do not want a cavern dweller in the flank of mummies. Instead, I want to make it an illegal charge, right? Which I guess is fine, but it does make it so I have to push this giant forward to be on the line, right? Which allows a lot of that jamming to happen against me, which I don't want, which is units like this can come in, charge, and if they were larger, block all the area, or can just charge the giant at all, right? So if I had just walked this back a little bit, it can make it so this mummy unit has the cavern dweller in their front, and maybe even out of the range, probably out of the 12 is what I'd want to do, so I don't get combo charged by a bunch of stuff here. But I really just want to make sure that the giant cannot be charged, and unfortunately, due to my movement, I can't quite accomplish that. So instead, I do the second best plan, which is to make it so you charge into the flank of the mummies. You can't complete that charge due to the giant, and I'll just have to accept that the giant can be charged. Moving on, I move the Soul Snare forward. It's just out of 12 of the Cavern Dweller, so I can drain life on it, but it cannot charge me. These guys are within charge range of the Cavern Dweller. It could come in here, but that is I think maybe the Lord on Frostfang could also charge me, but that combo charge is also not particularly good, just because I have the horde of skeleton warriors over here ready to go. I've got these guys ready to go, and I'm not exactly sure that's within 12. But anyway, this is not exactly 12. I misspoke before, because I wanted to be able to back up and get 2 more turns. So I back up 2.5 inches. It can charge 12 inches, meaning I had to be 9.5 inches beyond the 6, so 15.5 inches away, or 16 to be safe. So that's probably about where I am, which means that this unit's probably not within charge range. Anyway, a bit of math there, but let's move off to the right, which is nothing moves. I just sit stock still, except for this ASB, which I make a mistake on as well. So this is mistake 2 of turn 2, which is I move to inspire the Soul Snare, but I just went through how the Soul Snare can't be targeted by any shots. The Ice Elementals are too far away. I mean, they could surge and shoot me, I guess, but why? So nothing can target this thing really, so it's not in any danger, and I leave these guys high and dry against another shooting unit. So what I should have done is just left it probably about here at the maximum of 6 for this, so I could move over here in the future, but instead I move it over here to protect the Soul Snare, which it's okay, but it's just not optimum, right? This is an okay move. And off here with shooting, we start with these crossbows. They fire into the Lord on Frostfang. We do 1 damage. I could have fired at the pack hunters again, but it's -2, so I might as well snapshot that. And instead, I was like, I'd rather have 8 shot on 6s and just get some plink damage out here because my opponent doesn't have any heal on this side of the table. So 1 and 1. And over here, we fire the catapults and the Soul Snare into the Cavern Dweller, and the catapults both miss again, but the Soul Snare manages 4 wounds, which is pretty nice, and I do end up getting a boxcar waiver here, so super lucky getting that waiver, just huge luck. And over here we've got the crossbows, also a called shot, I just want to say. We've got the crossbows over here firing into my opponent's what are these, not snow foxes, that's what they're called. So I do 2 damage and I get a waiver. I like doing this a lot in games against these units. My opponent is so wary of this at this point that they're just like their muscle memory does not allow them to butt into the back here, because I fired into this fox unit, wavered it, and trapped his what are these Frostfang cabs so many times at this point, and I thought I was going to get it again on this game, but it turns out that this is greater than 40 millimeters, this gap right here. So unfortunately, the nimble foxes will be at it to get out of the way, but I did get another waiver, so that's good. And here we go with these crossbows firing into, that must not have been the crossbows, right? I show the crossbows, but that must be the, or this one, this is the crossbows. I think that is actually the Enslaved Guardian Archer's fire here. And only managed 4 wounds. It's okay, but, you know, the Enslaved Guardian Archers are such a good unit that I always expect more of them, even if it's, you know, they're hitting on that mean. So anyway, I get the 4 wounds there. I don't get a waiver. That one sucks a little bit because I do roll a 9 and they are a 10-12. So I was like, yeah, but I got a boxcar waiver and I got a pretty, you know, this is a 7 waiver. So I'm like, yeah, I'm not mad about it, but it would have been, you know, the perfect play if this had also nailed the waiver, just to make it so these wolves are out of the turn for another turn. Out of the game for another turn, I should say. Anyway, this is the end of turn shot. You can see things are looking a little interesting. I do like how anvil armies, or you know, some people call them tough armies or whatever. I like how they just sit in this line until, you know, parts of it start moving. So this is still in those, you know, those straight lines, while tempo armies, right, start to U very quickly. And I don't know, it's a nice visual. And then I respond to the U, right? So these guys are starting to U. Anyway, that's that. Let's move on to Northern Alliance turn 2. So Northern Alliance turn 2 looks a bit like this. It's probably what you expect. The Lord on Chimera and the Thunderwolves decide to just go and slaughter those crossbows. Now, I think my opponent's thought here was that the double one the double one threat is not high because I only have this unit that can get into the Lord on Chimera right now. So he's pretty well protected, or they're pretty well protected even against the double one. And the Thunderwolves can definitely get this done on their own. It's a pretty easy roll for them. But the Lord on Chimera doesn't have the best targets to go after, and really just wanted to be able to project down deep threat, right? So all these backfield units are afraid of the Lord on Chimera, so you might as well push deeper. Anyway, then we have the unit of pack hunters that I neglected to shoot in my previous turn. They decide to charge into my unit of skeleton spearmen. Again, these guys have Thunder's Charge as one of their rules, so not anymore, you don't. So they're going to go in there, and I mean, it's a good charge, but you know, just showing out the power of those spears again. And I know I was actually watching one of my old battle reports recently because I am that bored. And I was talking about how skeleton spearmen I don't really understand. But I was trying to talk about that in relation to I wasn't sure how powerful Phalanx was going to be yet. And honestly, at this point, I really like Phalanx as a rule. So yeah, skeleton spearmen are pretty solid. Anyway, that out of the way, you can see the foxes do nimble their way out of the way, so the Frostbane Cav can charge my mummies. On average, that's an 8 to kill me twice, so I'm not super afraid of it, but I mean, like any sensible person, I'm still somewhat afraid of it. And this is what I was talking about with if I just backed up a little bit and made it so this was probably out of my charge range. It makes it so these foxes cannot do this charge into my giant and thus trap these units. Because if these guys want to charge me like this, right, and then fail to kill the mummies getting into the flank is super bad. So they probably wouldn't have gone for that. So anyway, this is messing me up a little bit, although if we go back a picture, you can see the foxes, I believe, are still butt against these elementals, and then the elementals move on to the hill. This is illegal, right? Because the foxes need to charge into the giant, who's height 5. These guys are height 3, so they can see it, but currently they can't do it because they have nimble but not flight, right? So they can't just jump over. They need to clear at least 40 millimeters with these ice elementals. Now the ice elementals walked onto this hill, which makes them height 5, which makes this illegal, right? Because now the foxes have to move second is the point. They can't see right now, so these elementals should be a little bit farther back, just to make sure that the foxes can both still see the giant and have the 40 millimeter clearance that they need to nimble and go in, right? But it's a small mistake, and I didn't even notice until I was looking at these pictures. So anyway, with that out of the way, you can see my opponent is now forming the line, so they are trying to get a bit more value out of this, waiting my little undead charges here. But yeah, these foxes are blocking up all 3 of these units from being able to push forward without some surge shenanigans, and specifically blocking up this giant, which sucks. Off here on the right, you can see the pack hunters decide to leave cover, move forward, because they are going to shoot into my crossbows, which are a pretty weak target, especially because I moved my ASB out of the way, and get ready to be able to charge into my skeletons, because they outranged them due to their wild charge, right? And the Lord on Chimera just walks over to the trolls to protect them a little bit better, while still inspiring these guys because of that very inspiring. And with that, we go into the shooting. They fire into my crossbows. They do 3 damage, or no, 2 damage. And unfortunately for me, they roll the 9 once. So I'm like, yeah, I definitely shouldn't have moved that inspiring so far. So anyway, they're gone. Over here, the skeletons take 5 damage from the ice elementals, which is that a good roll? They hit with like 9 on average, and then they wound on 3. So yeah, so 5 is pretty good. And over here, yeah, the Lord on Chimera and Thunderwolves walk right through those crossbows. Yeah, that's what I expected. So we're going to have to deal with that threat real quick here. And in combat here, the Skeleton Spearmen take 2 damage from the Pack Hunters. That's about right because they're 10 attacks on 4s and 4s, so 2 damage. Right here, yeah, this is the letdown for my opponent, is that the Thunderwolves, or not the Thunderwolves, the Frostbane Cav, go into the mummies. They only manage 6 wounds, which is pretty yikes, and that's a boxcar twice. Thankfully, they don't hit it, but you never want to see that. And the giant takes 1 or 2 wounds from I think it's 1 wound from the foxes, so just looking to life leech that back on my turn. But you can see, this is the end of turn 2. Things are looking, from an Empire Dust perspective, things are working about how I thought they would, which is, my mummies didn't die on that charge. The only wrench in the works is this little fox regiment being able to run forward and charge the giant, thus trapping these spears. But due to liberal application of Surge, I might be able to fix it. So anyway, let's go into turn 3. So turn 3, let's start with the left side here with the charges. Or actually, let's talk about the shooting. So these catapults cannot see the Lord on Chimera, so they're probably going to go for, well, they're obviously going to go for a different target because they can't see that one, right? They could go for the Ice Elementals, but the Frost Queen with heal 5, or Ice Queen with heal 5 back there, gets to reroll 1 die when targeting frozen units, so I probably don't want to hit the Ice Elementals just yet, especially because they're at dash 18. What I'd prefer to do is get some more damage onto this Cavern Dweller and just try to one-shot it, or not one-shot it, but try to kill it right now. It's very difficult to kill off because it's a 16-18 and def 5, right? But my opponent cast heal on it on the previous turn and healed 0 of the 4 wounds it had. So it's sitting on 4 wounds right now. I've got 2 catapults and a drain life, right? So, and Talinar Standard is not within 6 inches. So it is, I don't even know if it's inspired. So I'm just going to try to get that kill with my range attacks and see if we can pull it off. These guys right here, I'm going to go for the Thunderwolves. I just want to clean up the unit real quick. I could, again, fire into the Lord on Chimera. It's a clean shot because these guys don't grant cover to it, but I don't really care too much. This is, both these units are in the front, right? So if I can just kill off the Thunderwolves and limit the ability, like if this 300 point unit wants to come and kill catapults, go nuts. If it wants to charge a monolith, even better. So I'm not too afraid of this thing's choices just yet, but this smaller unit can get a lot more value, and I need to outvalue my opponent here. So I'm going to go for that kill. On my charges, I do charge with the skeleton, or I countercharge. I countercharge with the Skeleton Spearmen into my opponent's Pack Hunters. That clears enough room for a multi-charge with the Mummies countercharging and this giant real charging against the Frostbane Cav. I don't know. It could swing one way or the other. I mean, that's a lot of 4+ to hit units, right? But they're all very high crushing, so I could get something there. The mummies managed to regen 2 back, and then I pop my healing brew, and I get 2 off that, so I'm down to 2 wounds right now. And then, of course, I have life leech, so that's... Wait, did I regen? I might have regened 3. Anyway, I'm either 1 or 2 wounds right now, so I'm feeling pretty good about that. This giant countercharges the foxes, looking to kill them off, and then this unit can crab walk over here. It can't disengage because it was not fighting these foxes, but it can crab walk over here. It's 1 inch away from the foxes, so that's legal. And then this is a 7-inch surge into the ice elementals, which I'm going to go for using the monolith and the undead ASB, which is over there. Actually, I don't think I use the undead ASB in this. So anyway, we're going to go for that. And speaking of that, off here on the right, yeah, the undead ASB is within 12-inch range, but the monolith has to cast first in the round, which is a rule. I don't really like that one, and it's not just because it's a power thing, but just because it's something that you could easily forget. It's one of the only timing issues in Kings of War, a game that doesn't even use timing charts, right? So I'm not a huge fan of the fact that you have to do it first in your shooting phase. I think you should be able to do it like a surge, right? But anyway, I digress. That means that this unit cannot cast Surge before I do it with the Monolith, and then when the Monolith casts it, it's likely going to be out of range. But, oh well. I'm still inspiring all three of these, so that's good. And let's go into the shooting. So first off, I guess we're going to skip the shooting. I'll show you at the end of the round. So we've got 3 wounds onto these pack hunters from my skeletons. That's about what I'd expect. And it does end in a waiver, so yeah, that's fine. I would obviously prefer to kill, because then I could turn these skeletons to face the Lord on Chimera and maybe Tundra Wolves over there, but instead, a waiver it's okay. It's what I expect as opposed to more, right? Then over here, we get the Spearmen. I do manage to get this Surge off. I can't remember if I used Septic Ray and the Monolith, or the Monolith managed it on its own. Either way, I get this Surge, and I charge into the Ice Elementals. I do 1 or 2 damage. Honestly, I have no idea how much damage I did, because it didn't matter. It wasn't a roll, right? I didn't do 5 or more, or no, 6 or more here because of the Talinar standard for the rally. But I do manage to heal 1 off, so I'm down to 4, and I, importantly, disorder this unit, so it cannot shoot during my opponent's next turn. And off here, this giant that was fighting against the foxes kills them in 1 go. And the mummy fight plus the giant, this is a bit of a heartbreaker, or a bit of an up and down, I guess, depending on which side you're on. So the mummies, I roll first. They've got 12 attacks on 4s, they wound on 3s. They do, I think, 10 wounds on their own. They did either 9 or 10 wounds, and I was like, wow, this unit's going to be dead. Then the giant attacks, I get 9 attacks, and I'm like, yeah, that's fine, that's pretty good. And I manage one wound. So I get these guys to 11, so I guess these guys had to have done 10. And I rolled up, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm still brutal, so I turn off that Talinar standard. So it's a 6 twice, which is a pretty... It's okay. It's not as high as a lot of people might think, because it is re-rolled. But still, it's a pretty decent roll, and unfortunately, I can only get the waiver. I kill him on the first roll, and the second is, I believe, a 5, and I'm like... Giant, come on, bud. But anyway, it's again towards what I'd expect. I wouldn't expect these 2 units together to be able to kill off these Frostbane Cavs, so getting a waiver is fine. And with that, we get an end of turn shot. I'll talk about the shooting real quick. So the Tundra Wolves, yeah, they get deleted by the archers. I fire all this off. I get a bad turn of shooting. The catapults again miss, and the Soul Snare, I'm not sure if it missed. Maybe it did. I don't know. I honestly can't. Oh, did this unit have 1 wound on it? Because maybe it did 1 wound and I healed it off. Either way, it didn't do well with any of this shooting, so I don't even get a nerve check on this unit, I don't think. And that's going to be that. So let's move into turn 2 for the Northern Alliance. So turn 2 Northern Alliance. 1 sec, I'm going to take a drink. So turn 2 Northern Alliance is interesting. So first off, we have this Chimera. It can either charge into the flank of this giant or the flank of this giant. I couldn't manage it any better, because if we go back a picture, if I decided to overrun more this way, these trolls can charge me. And if I turn it all right, like this can charge me in the flank. So there's just too much. So I had to sort of let it happen. And then this charge was just, it was going to happen how it was going to happen. So with this, my opponent does take the Chimera into this giant, which I prefer, because this giant is more important to me right now. And it sets off a chain of events where, first off, these 2 units have to actually disengage from me far enough for the Chimera to land, including this unit, right? So it's pulling back a bit more, which I'm cool with, because if I fail to kill this unit on my next turn, I prefer it, farther away from me, obviously. So yeah, going into this giant, I would obviously prefer. This giant over here fighting against the Cavern Dweller, that is because the giant otherwise has an easy charge into the flank of these guys. I probably wouldn't even do that, because I do have the shooting to kill off this unit as well. So instead, I think I would go for Talinar Standard here, try to one-shot it and get the overrun. And if I fail it, If I fail it, it's not that bad because again, I have all that shooting, and there's not a whole lot beyond these ice elementals that can deal with this giant. But anyway, the ice elementals countercharge these skeletons. Let's see. I'm at 4 damage right now. So they hit about 9 times on average. They do about 6 wounds, right? So putting me at a 10, so that's going to be a 5 twice on the mean. That's pretty fair in my opponent's favor because I would look at it between a 3 and a 7, right? So it's either a 3 to kill me or a 7 to kill me rather than looking at it as a 5. And both of those are pretty decent. So anyway, that's going to be what my opponent goes for. Again, the Cavern Dweller has to block up this giant, so charges there. And off here on the right, this is the flowchart of problems because the Lord on Chimera did not charge this giant. This Lord on Frostfang then has to block up the Enslaved Guardians because otherwise they can pivot and go this way and try to get some bomb charges onto, or bomb surge charges onto this Cavern Dweller, which are possible because I have Surge 20 in the list and 2 rerolls, so it's pretty decent. So they charge in here to block that up, which makes it so these guys have to charge into the skeletons to block them, because otherwise they'll just come kill the Lord on Chimera. So yeah, just that, or Lord on Frostbang. So just because that Lord on Chimera charged that giant, all of these second form problems happened, right? So I'm pretty okay with that because Surge is a good rule. And over here with the shooting, so we start off with the Ice Queen, and in fact the only shooting of the turn. Cast heal onto the Frostbang Cav, managing 2 heal off of them, so about what I'd expect. Over here with the Ice Elementals fighting against these Skeleton Spearmen, yeah, they did 2 whole wounds. And I'm like, oh man. So again, this unit has already fulfilled what I'd expect, which is I want 2 rounds of combat from these guys. And you might be going, well, it didn't fight in 2 rounds of combat until this one. But I consider being shot at by a unit like this 1 round of combat, right? So a series, like the same thing with my Enslaved Guardian Archers or a horde of Decimators or whatever. Eating 1 turn of shooting and surviving is 1 turn of combat in my mind. This is, and then the second turn was getting that surge charge. This is now going to give me 3rd turn of combat, which I'm super into. Or 3rd turn of me being able to move, right? So yeah, bad dice for my opponent. Over here, the Pack Hunters, they manage 1 whole wound against my Skeleton Warriors, so good for them. Just a good clap real quick. They tried, right? It was over a barrier. They're hitting on 5s and wounding on 4s, so, 1 wound is fine. And right here, the Lord on Frostfang manages 5 wounds, which I think is about right. I think it has 8 attacks base. I'm never quite sure with those Snow Fox units. But anyway, I think it has 8 base, deals 5 to me, which is fine. I don't die on the boxcar, so cool. Over here in the combat between 2 giant-esque models, I take 4 wounds. Actually, I think we're the only 2 giants left on 50s, right? So anyway, it's cool. They do 4 damage to me. Okay, I don't die. That's good. Anytime I don't die, it's fine. And over here, this is the big one that I don't die. My opponent takes the Lord on Chimera into the giant here on the flank, does 13 wounds to me, which again is around the mean, which is a 5 to kill me twice. And I was actually, I think my opponent was as well, doing the math and going like, oh yeah, this is going to be a double 1 kill. But instead it's a 5 twice, which is bad, but not terrible. Again, it's what I was talking about with the Ice Elementals. And right here, they roll that 4 and I survive. So, yikes. It's not as bad as it looks just because this giant doesn't do too much damage and these guys definitely don't. But it's still significantly worse because my opponent's going to have to kill this giant. It's going to have to devote more resources and they're slowly losing those as time goes on. I will remark here that originally I was like, I could just charge forward with this giant, like I can just choo-choo down the line here, and my opponent was like, oh, I thought I had blocked it with the foxes, so I just push them down a little bit because I think they could have. The way that they got here was by just crab walking and then pivoting, so I'm not sure they could have, but it doesn't really matter because, I also thought that at the beginning. It's fine, so we just pull them down a little bit. So anyway, let's go into turn 4. So turn 4 for the Empire of Dust. First off, on the left, we have the obvious charges, which are the Skeleton Spearmen into the flank of the dragon, or Chimera, and then the giant here going into the front. Then we have these mummies fighting against the foxes. My opponent put them here just to make sure that the mummies could not fight this dragon, which was actually impossible. Because I can't pivot and surge, right? Because these are an inch away and I'll be within an inch. So anyway, I go in there. I'm not sure. Mummies being a 4+ to hit unit, you're never quite sure what they're going to do in a combat, right? Like whether they're going to, kill a thing. But anyway, I do take my other bone giant and I just go nope to this fight. I disengage 1 inch and then I walk 7 inches over here and I go look at this flank charge. So I think it was a 5 or 6 inch flank. I have Surge 8, I have Surge 8, Surge 4, and then an emergency Surge 8 as well. So that's going to be the plan. Just try to one-shot the king right here. Or not, that's not a king, a lord. And then I also countercharge here, and let's see how that all goes. My shooting, again, in the backfield does not move, because I do not need it to. In fact, I really need it to sit still, because I need to kill these Frostfang. Because if I can delete this unit off, I'll be in a pretty decent spot, because I can kill that unit pretty easily. This unit will be effectively dead, because it's stuck fighting skeletons, and then kill this unit, and ground this one. That'll be excellent. So anyway, that's going to be the plan. The Cavern Dweller is not facing backwards. It just doesn't work well with other models. And I did check before I moved anything. This can see Sebic Ray, but it cannot rotate in such a way to charge it. It cannot charge, obviously, any of this. It can't charge the Giant, even if I fail surging, and it can't charge any of these because we're not in line of sight. So I'm in a great spot right there. And right here, let's start with the surging. So we start with the monolith, but we move to this. That plus the monolith, yeah, we easily get this off. Actually, the monolith did not surge that far, but the ASB just nails it. 4 out of 4 surge. Good job, bud. So yeah, we get into there and get into that flank, and it allows Sebic to do something else, which is obviously heal a unit, because I'm not going to surge anyone this turn. And this is just showing off that angle I was talking about before. So let's talk about these combats, starting on the left. First off, with shooting, I do manage to kill off the Frostfang Cav Horde. I didn't roll particularly well because, again, these guys suck. Or they don't suck. I just missed with them again. So they're just not rolling particularly well. I think this unit has hit once at this point in the game, maybe twice. And then this unit has not hit yet. And this is the shattering one. So anyway, I fire off these guys. I manage 2 wounds, which is not great, but it's not a bad roll until you roll nerve. So I do manage to kill them off. I hit the 6 twice that time, though. So they're gone. In the combat with the dragon, or not the dragon, it's a chimera, I manage, I think, 7 wounds to it, which is pretty good. Except for, again, like, I think 6 of it was done by the skeletons, which is great for the skeletons, but this giant is just really pooping himself over here. So, but I do ground the dragon. It can only charge, one of these 2 things, so I'm okay with that. The mummies, on the other hand, yeah, we charge into these foxes. We do 1 point of damage, and I'm like, you know what, mummies? Good on ya. You did. They rolled insane the first turn. You get a turn of rest, I guess. We do waver them, so it's fine-ish. And then over here with these skeletons, we manage 1 wound against the ice elementals, so they're doing God's work up there. And over here on the right, yes, you'll notice that the Lord on Frostfang is gone. The Giant's actually right here where this base is, but big metal model does not work with Hill. So it's sitting up there. I back up with my Enslaved Guardians, and this is, again, where this line is pointing out that I can't be charged with any of this stuff. I can't back up far enough. And I do go into this unit right here. I do really well on the hits and wounds. I think I did, or maybe I did. Maybe I didn't do too well, but I do get a waiver, and I did, I think, 5 wounds there. So it's all right. That's fine. It is pretty high on their wounds, but yeah, getting that waiver is nice. It'll make it so getting a high waiver right now is nice because they can't come and fight me yet, and it makes it so it's significantly easier for the skeletons to just kill it off on the next turn because Empire Dust don't have access to Banechant, in case you're wondering, unless you want to buy the loot, obviously. I do leave the poor Soul Snare out to dry. That is because I backed it up just to make sure that I could shoot into the Lord on Chimera, in case this failed. And then I also have the target of the Cavern Dweller. So, oh no, that's right. These guys didn't miss. That's right. These guys did 2 wounds, and then I go, nah, I should fire into the Frostbane Cav. This does one hit and does like 3 or 4 wounds, and then does the shatter. So yeah, I did get a hit out of this on this turn. This guy did not. And then this did okay. I think it did 3 wounds, something like that. This is up to 5. I think that's right, because I mean it does have life leech 3, and then there's heal 5 in the army, so I'm not sure exactly how many wounds have stuck. But I think I did 3 wounds there. No, I did 2, because this unit's down to 2 wounds right now. Yeah, so I hit it with the life leech heal, and then it did its own life leech. I guess I hit it with the drain life heal, then it life leeched. Anyway, that's going to be it for Empire Dust. Let's move on to turn 4 for the Northern Alliance. So turn 4 Northern Alliance, it's pretty simple. You charge, right? So we have the pack runners walking over here to get into the flank of these skeleton spearmen. They can set up for a charge. It's pretty nice, but the big thing is just to make sure that when they're shooting, I don't have cover. So going there. Then we have the Lord and Chimera deciding to finish off this giant. If they don't do it, I mean, you're fired. You're fired if you can't kill that giant. So anyway, then the foxes just remain engaged with me. This is an interesting one. I couldn't find it exactly in the book at the time, and I haven't been able to find it just yet, which is my opponent insisted that you do not remain engaged at the end of combat, right? Which is a fine interpretation. I just don't know what the rule is about this, right? So like, does it actually remain engaged with me if my opponent chooses not to move it, even though it's wavered? Would I have to, if I countercharged, right? Do I move at all? Who knows? I don't. Anyway, that's that. Up here. Let's go back a picture. This unit apparently just got bisected. So we've got the Ice Elementals again countercharging into this unit. It's sitting at 5 wounds right now because it did get its life leech going. Maybe I even healed it with Sebek. I don't know. But anyway, it's sitting. It's probably it's fine. This unit's done great. So if it dies now, I'm perfectly fine with that. And up here on the right, yeah, the snow trolls charge into my giant. That was purposeful because you might have noticed, I can't go that many pictures back, but the snow trolls were about here, and it looked like their leader point wasn't on the hill. That is only because this unit is so spindly on top of this hill that it didn't quite line up, but that was the intent. So that's why the giant went here, blocked up the charge, and set this up. I don't think snow trolls will one round me. I think they're 18 attacks on 4s and crush 2 with vicious, but they might. Giant's not it is tough, but it's not the toughest, right? It's only def 5-18, I say, mildly sarcastically. So anyway, then we have the Packiners just remaining over here as well. Again, not sure if remain engaged is really a thing. And then we have the Cavern Dweller charging into my Soul Snare, looking to treble their attacks and just kill it in one go, which is fair enough. And over here, starting with the shooting, they manage 1 point of damage, so, good on them. Just a quick golf clap. And with the Ice Queen, they managed to heal up the dragon by 3 wounds, which is pretty solid. I don't know if they should have healed the dragon or the Ice Elementals. I think the dragon's probably the best thing to heal right there. So that seems good. And in the combat, the dragon the Chimera easily one-shots my giant, getting it to 19 wounds. The Ice Elementals roll well this time. Managed to kill off my skeleton spearmen. Actually, I don't think they rolled particularly well on their hit and wounds, but they rolled very high on the nerve and just take them out finally. And over here, we have the Cavern Dweller killing off my Soul Snare. I'm not even sure we rolled it because my opponent rolled up the attacks. It's 30 attacks on 3s and 2s, and I was like, because we were playing this game a little later than normal, which is also pretty late, so I just wanted to push through it. Anyway, we've got the trolls here going into my giant, managing 7 wounds, which is very solid, but thankfully not landing the 11 twice to kill me. And here's the end of turn shot. So you can see things are they're a little interesting because my opponent has some big unit strength in these zones and 1 flying unit strength, right? And then my unit strength is mostly in, again, these infantry regiments, and this horde is a little out of position. But they have currently unit strength 3, 6, 3, 6, 7 in the zone, but that's probably not going to live. 7 unit strength that's really actionable, while I have 3, 6, 7, 10, 13 unit strength that's really actionable. So It's still definitely in my favor, but I also have higher unit strength anyway, and my units are in questionable positions right now where if I fail to kill, things are going to get real messy real quick. So anyway, with that out of the way, let's go into turn 5. So turn 5 for the Empire Dust, we're going to just continue with the battle plan. So first off, we send the Skeleton Spearmen into the flank of the dragon. My opponent could have blocked the flank, but decided that seeing the flank of my mummies was more important, and I agree. So they go for that. This is where we were talking about with the remain engaged, because can I disengage or whatever? I'm not sure if we could, and in the end, we decide to just move this guy a little bit, I think, because they could have just disengaged and had this unit move forward to block it to be, so they don't have to go the full 1 inch, right? And make it so I can't disengage and see the dragon. So anyway, if you guys know the answer, feel free to tell me in a polite fashion. So the mummies go back into the snow foxes, which is fair. I don't care about the ice elementals right now. I'm going to try to shoot them down because they are 50% on that hill, so they have no cover from anything. So I'm going to fire off the enslaved guardian archers and the double catapult and try to kill them right now. They do have 3 or 4 damage on them, so it's a decent target. And over here on the right, you can see the Skeleton Warriors are just going to try to finish off these pack hunters real quick. The Giant does go for a charge on the Snow Trolls. I'm just looking to start adding damage. They have regen 5+, so I'm not looking for a kill, nor am I looking to get some serious damage going just yet, but I want to trigger that Life Leech, and I don't need to be going for these weird surge flank charges on units like this. Especially because I have a surge lined up with the Enslaved Guardians. They just turn towards the Cavern Dweller and get ready for a 1 inch surge, which I have the Monolith to do. And anyway, so we're starting with the shooting. We fire into the ice elementals. I actually do roll cold on this turn. I remember this quite clearly. The catapults miss, and the archers, I think I only hit twice. And I was like, well, it's a question of timing, not of this unit being bad or these units being bad. And unfortunately, their timing was bad here. And over here, the mummies do manage to kill off the foxes. I cannot turn, though. That's why I mean by the timing. I really needed to kill this unit off the ice elementals, because if I did, when I kill off the foxes here, I can just turn the mummies and take a front charge from the dragon, which, much like a front charge from the fox or the Frostbane Cab, I'm not super afraid of. But unfortunately, I don't kill the ice elementals, and of course they can't be wavered. So instead, I just go, well, I'll just slide this way. There's no way to block. I guess maybe I should have turned towards the Chimera and forced the ice elementals to flank charge me. I think that might have been the move, but I did not do that at the time. I decided to just resign myself to my fate and crab walk over towards the Chimera and go like, it's the same thing as the Giant, right? So on average, it's a 5, 5 twice to kill me. I can do it. So anyway, the Enslaved Guardians, I do get the 1 shot on the Cavern Dweller. That felt really good because the Cavern Dweller only had 2 wounds on it. It's a 16-18, right? So it's effectively a 14-16. I have 18 attacks on 3s and 3s, so I'm looking at like 8 damage to it. So that's going to be an 8 once to kill it. And on just the mean dice there, and I hit it. So I'm like, that is a lucky break, especially after I missed those ice elementals. Feels good. Over here with the Giant, I do some amount of wounds to these trolls. I don't know. It's not a great number of wounds, but you can see down here in the bottom right that I'm down to 1 wound, and that is because Sebek casts heal onto my Bone Giant with no skeletons around him, and managed to hit all 5 heal, and then I got that life leech, so I'm down to 1 wound, and my opponent's like, ugh, stupid skeletons. And speaking of dumb skeletons, these ones managed to kill off those pack hunters. So yeah, things are not looking great for the snow trolls right now. And here's the end of turn shot. You can see these guys are getting primed for a flank charge or maybe a surge flank charge, because I am on this barrier right now. So it's about there, I think, in where it actually is on the table. But otherwise, things aren't the worst for Northern Alliance right now. They're definitely not good, but they could maybe get if they can pick up the Giant, the mummies, and maybe this unit this turn, which that's a pretty big ask to pick up them. But if they can do that, they're still in this game, right? Because then I'm down to unit strength 3, 4, 7, right, or 10. But this unit's pretty far out. I'd have to surge it forward into it. So anyway, they could they're still surprisingly in this game, is what I'm going at, I guess. So anyway, the Chimera can charge the flank here, and then I can get charged with this monolith. No one ever charges the monolith, keeps presenting charges. Is it because it's a Def 5-18 unit that can't be disordered? Maybe. Anyway, here we go with turn 5 for Northern Alliance. We've got the Lord and Chimera going into the flank of the mummies. We've been here before, and in fact, my opponent's like, yeah, we've been here before, and sends the Thane in as well, because the Thane has 3 attacks on 3s with Crush 1, so we're looking at around 1 damage on average, a little bit less. But if they can get that 1 damage, it might mean the world, right? So they go for it. The Pack Hunters go into the flank of my Skeletons, which is, whatever. I don't turn off their Thunderous Charge. It's actually very bad, because this unit has now 20 attacks on 4s and wounds me on 3s. So, not, yeah, we had to stop that dragon, right? Or that Chimera. The Ice Elementals go for an interesting play here, where they move forward. They're full 6, so they can shoot into this. Now they have a very long surge to get in there. So the Ice Queen could surge him to get the double tap, right? I'm only at 1 damage though, so it had to be a pretty decent damage roll on this before you'd even attempt that, because I think that's like a 6-inch surge, right? And this is a Surge 8er. So anyway, we've got the Trolls going into this Giant. Again, it's only at 1 wound, so I'm not super afraid of that. And here we go with the shooting. So first the Ice Elementals fire, and they manage 4 wounds, which is, that's okay. They've got 18 shots on 4s and 4s, so 4 wounds is pretty good. But my opponent in the end decides, yeah, I'm not going to go for that long bomb surge, and instead goes for a heal on the dragon, I want to say. But we'll just skip by that. We have the Pack Hunters going to the flank here. Now this is interesting. My opponent hits with 19 attacks. Care to guess how many wounds? Were you thinking 7? That's not great. So my opponent hits with 19 and only wounds with 7 on 3s to wound, which actually makes it almost the average there. So things come around, right? So anyway, these guys do not die in their 1 shot. I don't think I'm actually in inspiring range either. So it was an 8 once. Thankfully they don't hit it. So we're ready to go. And over here with the Trolls, they manage 4 wounds on my poor Giant, my invisible Giant right now, which is not enough for even a roll. So we just move right on past that, on to turn 6. So turn 6, yeah, I'm almost certain that this went for the heal on the dragon. So anyway, with turn 6, I have this unit. So it is, it could countercharge onto these Pack Hunters. I don't see the point in that. So instead I just stay put, because my plan is, I'm going to fire everything I have at this dragon, right? Or at this Chimera. And I'm going to try to kill it that way. If I fail that, then I have a surge. I won't be able to use the monolith, but I can use Sebek to surge this unit into the flank of the Giant, or into the flank of the Chimera. So that's going to be the plan. Then over here, I've got my Enslaved Guardians just decide to plane charge into the Ice Elementals. They're at 8 damage, right? So I don't need a good roll there to kill them off. What is this? Giant? Lost myself there. So the invisible Giant decides to go into the Trolls, of course, and then I move my horde of skeleton warriors forward. The barrier is right about here on the table, so I'm not on it anymore. I could have just flank charged him anyway, but then I would be on 6s. This way I can just go for a 1-inch surge, because I don't need to kill these guys right now, really, and I'm not really afraid of my Giant might die, but that's fine. I'll just do the same thing next turn if I fail the surge. So anyway, we're going to go for that 1-inch surge with my Surge 4. So that's the plan. Let's go into how it goes. So first off, we've got both the catapults and the archers, and we fire into the king. We put him on 17 wounds, or the Lord it's called now. So I do 17 wounds there, which is a double 1 to waver and a 4 to kill, and I decide in the end, yeah, I'm not going to send those skeletons in now, because they could fail. They hit on 5s. They've got 30 attacks, but they hit on 5s and wound on 5s, and if I don't do that 1 damage, I don't get a roll at all, right? And the Lord on Chimera here, even disordered, has a clean shot towards anything, and it won't be disordered if I fail that wound. So instead I go, no, I'll just go for the 4. If I get a waver, that's fine. And thankfully I get the kill, so it was a 4 twice. It's gone. I will get flank charged again here, but who really cares? And I decide to as a last bit, I think Sebek then casts Surge onto this unit and makes them go forward a little bit. I'm like, yeah, if there's a turn 7, I can walk into the zone. And off here on the right, yeah, all these things get melted. These guys, I think, only do 1 wound to the Ice Elementals. I've got 18 attacks on 3s and 3s, and I do one wound. So not the best, but again, not a bad roll until we roll Nerve, and I hit the 8 twice anyway, so whatever. So they're deleted, and then the Giant plus the Skeleton Warriors do manage to kill off these wounded trolls, and things are looking very bad for the Northern Alliance. I think they just want the game to end on 6 so they don't have to play a turn 7, but let's see how their 6 goes. So first off, these guys walk into my skeletons and just knock them out of the park this time. I'm wounded at 7 wounds, and they don't do the 19 hits anymore, but they don't need to, and they just take them out in one go. And here is the end of turn 6 total. The 2 characters, my opponent only has 3 units, right? And only this unit scores, so we've got unit strength 1 there, and then whatever here. These guys decide to just run behind the hill to preserve some points, just for, best practices in the future, while the undead just take over the center. And we roll off for a turn 7, and of course there's a turn 7, because when it rains, it pours. So anyway, in turn 7, you can see the Empire Dust. I don't really need to move them anymore. I'm not going to go for this this weird walk over here and surge some more, because it's not necessary. I'm just going to try to kill off all the units. So we're going to fire into this. I don't even move these guys, because the only thing that can charge is the Talonized Standard guy into my Monolith, and they cannot one-shot it. There's only one possible turn, so whatever. And here we go with the shooting. Yeah, we end up deleting that unit, and here we see the end of game shot. So you can see how the how everything looks out, and here is a circle showing off approximately what the zone is. All these units score, so I have unit strength 1, unit strength 3, unit strength 1, and unit strength 3. So it is an 8-2-0 victory for the Empire Dust, and we have a serious attrition score differential as well, so a very, very high win. But I don't know, there was a lot of wonky dice for my opponent there. I'm happy that my battle plan worked, right, that I actually made a battle plan, and that it worked out, so at least that happened. Let's talk about the list a little bit now, though. So anyway, starting with the Empire Dust list, I have now played this list in a few games, small variations thereof, but I really like it. I think it's very strong, and especially with the rise of the trees, right? We definitely have a person who used to play what it was called Treemonic Legion back in 6th Ed Warhammer, and they're really excited to bust out some trees again, and then they got that new special character in Helpy's Rift, and I'm like, oh, yikes. The one thing I will say about that, I think that special character is really fun. The thing I don't like is that they gave them Wiltfather. I look at that and I'm like, why would you take away the thing that makes Sylvankin Sylvankin? And I get that you might be like, the elves do that. And it's like, it'd be like going, here undead, here's Shobik, right? And it's like, oh, please don't. So I'm not a fan of that change. I don't think they should have done that. But I am a fan of that list. It's super strong, and as it pertains to this discussion, my Empire Dust list, I think, might fare well against it, just because the permutations I've been seeing rotate mostly around like Heart Piercers, so you get the 2 hordes of Shamblers, 2 regiments of Shamblers, you get the 2 Tree Herders at least, you get at least 1 Beast of Nature, maybe 2, and then you get the special character, right? And that list is very strong, but I'm a list of some really strong punching. I've got a lot of crushing strength in my army, I've got a lot of shambling, I'm fearless, and nothing in my army cares about phalanx. So I think it could be fun in the future if that list ends up being something I see a lot, an oppressive army. But otherwise, I think I really enjoy this. I think it's pretty strong. And I love Sebek Ray. That's a pretty fun name. Like, so if you didn't know, Sebek is another way to say Sobek, which is another way to say Shobik, or what I assume Shobik is based off of, which is the crocodile god of, what is it, fertility? Is it a fertility god? I'm not sure. But Sebek Ray is a syncretism of Sobek and Ray, or Ra, the sun god. So I think Sebek Ray is a pretty cool name. Anyway, moving on to the Northern Alliance. As I said at the beginning of this video, it has more units than I've seen in my opponent's armies before, and I think it has some legs as far as this version of Northern Alliance. I know my opponent has a very distinct vision of Northern Alliance, right? I know that, for example, they don't particularly put a lot of stock in ice elementals being broken, which I think they probably broken in the sense of like they're probably a little above the power curve, but I only think that as a multiplicative element, right? One horde of ice elementals is a good unit, but a second horde of ice elementals multiplies that power of the first horde by a decent amount or more than you might expect from an additive increase, right? So I like the idea, like up to four or five hordes, I guess, of ice elementals before you see depreciating returns. I think they're amazing in larger numbers, and I really like their new Halpi's Rift character. Really cool in a nice elemental list. But as far as this list goes, I like this version more than what my opponent has been running in the past. I don't know if they necessarily agree. I really like that Pack Hunters are the unit that that Mantic decided to make unlock in Northern Alliance instead of Icekin Hunters. I think that would have been the easy choice because they're Glade Stalkers that cost a bit more and have freezing tip arrows, right? But I actually prefer with the Pack Hunters. I think that makes for a bit more dynamic and varied game, right? So, cool idea. The only thing about this army that I don't particularly love is that we have the Ice Queen with Heal 5 and Surge 8 there. I would prefer that to have Blizzard or maybe just keep it with Icy Breath. Just because you have some decent range in those Pack Hunters already, and honestly, I'd like to see a bit more. Like you have the Pack Hunters, you have your Ice Elementals, and you have the Lord on Chimera for ranged, and getting just a slight bit more would be really strong. Again, I think that should just be more ice elementals, but I know I was talking to my opponent about it, and he was like, yeah, he uses Mirsha models for a lot of his stuff, and he was like, those are expensive, the models he used, and he was like, I'm not buying more of those. So I get it, but if you're looking at it just from a list point of view, probably I would just drop the Snow Trolls and grab the 5 points from somewhere, probably from the Ice Queen's heal, and then bam, you have a second horde of ice elementals. If you were wanting to play this style of Empire Dust and wanted to play it at 1995, I would probably drop the 2 troops of crossbows and the Undead ASB because you don't need the Inspire anymore, and maybe drop one of the catapults and work in your points otherwise. But the core of the list are the Bone Giants, the Spearmen, and the Enslaved Guardians. Everything else, both the Enslaved Guardians, everything else is an additive element, either to give you unlock, to give you surge, like the Skeleton Warriors are there for the unlock. But and then the Living Legends that are really important are the Monolith. The Monolith is huge, and then probably Sebek Ray now over the Soul Snare. Although the Soul Snare is obviously amazing, it's good for your list. So anyway, that's it. I hope you guys liked it, and until next time, bye.